And finally, Brent, thanks to you, I actually know what I am. I'm the antagonist. Right? Anybody agree with that? Where's my protege at? You agree with that? See, he actually knows what he is too. Yeah. So, question. All right. And I'm not going to stand up there. I'm going to make you watch me walk around. So, how many folks in here know what 10% of the gross revenue of their company is? Raise your hand. I went to Europe and I asked this question, and about 3 people raised their hand of about 50 senior executives, and I said, all right, all of you raised your hand, stay, the rest of you get out, because you don't deserve to be here. If you don't know what 10% of the gross revenue of your company is, how can you ever make a decision? Because that's what's at risk. The people that do this change that we're about to do, the value, for some reason, comes out to be about 10% of the gross revenue that your company generates. All right? So yesterday, we saw some wonderful presentations, and they were all about people. Right? So that's why I'm the antagonist, because it's about people. How many folks in here, since we have easels, how many folks in here can draw? Raise your hand. Draw. Draw. How many folks can draw? Right? Perfect, all right. How many folks in here can sing, because we're going to have to present? Really? Now I know why all you folks that didn't raise your hand, you know what's at risk? The folks that don't address the human side of this, you know what you get to experience? A 25% decrease in productivity, because that's what the average company experiences. If you don't address the human side of this, 25% is what's at risk for you. Down. Right? If I go in and ask a kindergarten class, I used to teach kindergarten, if I go and ask them how many can draw and how many can sing, how many kids raise their hand? Every one of them. And every kid that raises their hand, right, they know they can do it. Matter of fact, they think they do it well, right? And good for them. But you were once those kindergartners. What happened? Right? Do you all of a sudden decide I can't draw? Do you all of a sudden decide, right, that I can't sing? Because the way you make those decisions or the way you make the decisions in your business, the past is a wasteland of horrors. Right? Because you drag it forward with you in every decision you make. So there was a slide put up yesterday, and it was a good slide. And that slide basically said, I want this, but I have this. How many people saw that? And it was a wonderful depiction of a digital world, right? And a depiction of a mill that had pumps and everything was mechanical, right? You saw that. Everybody saw that, right? Right? You know that's the problem. The problem is we think it's about that, right? We think it's about things. It's not about things. It's about us, right? And our ability to make a choice to do something different. So the question is, how many folks in here know how to change a culture? Because there was a slide that said culture eats what? Strategy, right? That's part true, right? But that's what culture has for breakfast. You know what culture has for lunch? Profit. You know what culture has for dinner? The future. Culture eats everything is the right phrase you should use, right? So you ask yourself, how do I actually go change my culture? How many people in here know how to change their culture? Raise your hand if you know how to change your culture. How many people want to learn how to change their culture? All right? So 4 years ago, was it 4 years ago I done the keynote here? 4 years ago I done the keynote here, all right? And I stood up and said the problem was us, right? And it took about 40 minutes to do it. And then yesterday we sat and heard 3.5 hours of the problem is us, right? Now that wasn't defined exactly that way, but in every presentation it was that way. So guess what? Now we all admit that the problem is us, so what are we going to do about it, right? So we've been doing this for 4 years, and how do you think we started? We started like a virus, an infection, right? And that guy right over there is the infection, the guy in the brown jacket, right? His name's Carroll, right? And so that infection was an idea. That idea led to us changing our language first. How many folks think of their OPEX as insurance? In the room, raise your hand if you think of your OPEX as insurance. That's your problem because that's what it is. You are self-insured. How many folks are unstable and unreliable or feel like you are unstable and unreliable? Raise your hand if you think you are, right? I guarantee you if you look, about half of your organization exists for the insurance reason that you're unstable and unreliable. Right? And you're making that decision, and you create this hierarchy of decision rights around your OPEX to control the insurance. But is that where the risk is? No, it's not. The risk is where your customer is, right? So the risk is in the marketplace. So what we do is build an organization that divorces our decision rights of insurance from the customer, which is where the risk is. Does that make sense? It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But that's what we do. Right? The future doesn't have to look like that. So if you go in and you use words like insurance, right? You use words like in transparency because transparency changes the behavior of everybody when things are transparent. Right? Change your language first, and if you change your language, you change how people think, and when you change how people think, then you change how they behave, and you reinforce it with transparency. So you have to be deliberate. And so as a part of what we'll do in our little exercise today is we'll talk about what being deliberate means. And it's using the things that our organization thrives on, right? It's using peer pressure to get people to do things. It's putting people in a position where they have to teach instead of sit and nod their head, right? And when you select one person and you ask that person to come teach, what do? They have to learn it, and if they learn it, they believe it. And then they stand up and they talk about it in front of their peers. And then their peers don't want to be left out, right? That's how you create cultural change in your organization, and you have to do it deliberately. You can't hope it's going to happen because so many organizations that I go into, all I hear is we're going to go do this, and there's no plan. There's just kind of this, right? So I want you all to get in practice of doing something, because I grew up in rural Ohio, Knockemstiff, if you remember 4 years ago, and look it up on your phone if you want. It's a real place, right? Where I grew up there, anytime you heard a prayer, which is what hope is, you say amen at the end of every prayer. And I promise you, if you're in a meeting and you decide not to do anything, you just talk about it, and at the end of it say, wait a minute, we all got to say amen. Everybody will get the point, right? And your meetings will change, right? So as a part of what Peter's asked us to do, and there's no slides, as a part of what he's asked us to do, we're going to work on how to create cultural change in your organization by starting out being a virus, infecting people with ideas and words, and then being deliberate about how you change the organization. And we're going to use a little bit of Malcolm Gladwell. You guys familiar with Gladwell? You are. All right, we're going to use a little bit of Gladwell to do it. All right? Amen.